vlogging in September, vlogging in September, vlogging in September with gears and noise.
Good evening, everybody. Today I'm gonna tell you a story, and that is the story of the screaming sheep. Alright, so here we go. One day, I was out walking around, bored, and perhaps just a little bit lonely. Nobody was around, so I had nothing much better to do. After about a half hour or so, I stumbled upon a farm. It was a beautiful place, but what really caught my eye was the lone sheep standing near me inside his fenced-off area. I must have been lonely because my first instinct was to talk to the sheep, but people talk to their animals all the time, right? Hello, sheep. How are you doing today? Wow, I must have scared the shit out of him. I apologized immediately, and that's when I remembered. Hey, sheep can't scream, that's a people noise. It dawned on me that this sheep must be the long-lost traveler known as Montoya, who sold his soul for the ability to read the minds of his foes. Now, it was rumored the gift drove Montoya mad, and when the devil finally came to collect his soul, he just turned him into a sheep instead. I guess he thought it was funny. After my realization, I decided to chat with Montoya for a while. After decades of suffering, I thought maybe he could use the company. I told him about the World War I and the Depression, and I also told him a bit about Prohibition. And then Montoya screamed again. A bit startled, I then told him about World War II and the rise and fall of Nazi Germany. I also told him a little bit about Pearl Harbor, and then Montoya screamed again. It seemed that I may have been upsetting him a little bit, so I decided to tell him about something more positive, like the moon landing and America's race against Russia's space program to get to the moon. Now, despite this being a more pleasant topic, Montoya screamed yet again. Okay, so maybe it wasn't so much the tone of the news, but perhaps the magnitude of the things that I was telling him. After all, discovering how much the world had changed could scare anyone who's been out of touch for the past 100 years, sheep included. So with that, I decided to tell Montoya small things to maybe make the rather one-sided conversation a little bit easier. So next I told Montoya about my family and my friends and what I had been doing with my free time lately, and then he screamed again. I decided to tone it back a little bit yet again and simply told him my favorite color, my favorite food to eat, and of course my favorite musicians. And Montoya screamed yet again. At this point, I was just getting a little annoyed and fed up, so I scared him just out of spite. And as, of course, you can guess, Montoya screamed again. It was at that point I found myself yelling at Montoya and really giving him a piece of my mind, and all the while I'm yelling at him, of course, Montoya is just screaming and screaming. As I was midway through my rant, I spotted in the distance a lady sprinting at me from the house, screaming at the top of her lungs to stop terrorizing her sheep. So to avoid any further conflict, I decided to leave the woman and her screaming sheep. I discovered later the screaming sheep was actually not Montoya, the lost traveler, but actually a sheep that just happened to scream like a woman for absolutely no reason instead of making sheep noises. Now, I don't know if there's a moral to this story, but I do know this. I want a field of screaming sheep. I want a field of screaming sheep bad. So that is the story of Montoya the screaming sheep. Have you got any stories about interesting animals or perhaps interesting sounds? Leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And until next time, goodbye.
And screen, and screen, and screen!